Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Daniel
with Kurt Bjorklund.
When we come to Daniel 9, we are in a section of the Bible that is often debated and quoted, specifically Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, which is the famous prophecy of the 70 weeks, which is really the hub of premillennial interpretation of the scripture, meaning the way that people see this prophecy plays into how they interpret the entire Bible. And my initial instinct when preparing to have these 5 good minutes on Daniel 9 was to spend a lot of time getting into the nitty-gritty of that. But as I read through the chapter, I realized that it's not a coincidence that this is 4 verses at the end of the chapter and that the narrative is actually much bigger. And so in this week, I'm not going to spend the time trying to mitigate the different views of that particular section of the Bible, but instead want to look at the broader narrative here and where it fits in the narrative and what its big point is, because I think ultimately that will be more helpful to any of us spiritually right now. Obviously, there's a time for that kind of careful interpretation and seeing the competing views. But Daniel 9 is really about Daniel's prayer for his people and confession of sin and a fresh perspective of God. And here's how it begins. It says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, by descent, a Mede, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, perceived in the books the number of years that, according to the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet, must pass before the end of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely the 70 years. So he's talking here about the exile. And he's referring most likely here to Jeremiah 25, where he came to understand this prophecy about the 70 years that people would be in exile. And the first just quick takeaway here is how important it is to be reading and understanding Scripture on a regular basis. And I commend you if you're working through Daniel with 5 good minutes and other Scripture inputs, because just simply having Scripture in your mind over and over again leads you to God. And that's precisely what happens here to Daniel. His Scripture contemplation, connecting dots, helped him begin to seek God. And then we see Verse 3, it says, Then I turned my face to the Lord, seeking him by prayer and pleas for mercy, with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. So his leading into this became confession, because he started then to say, I'm going to pray and plead for mercy. So what does prayer and pleading for mercy look like in your life? Does it flow out of Scripture? And the reason I ask this question is I think it's easy to seek God when things are intense in our lives, when we have an intense struggle, when we're at an intense decision point. But often in the routine of life, we don't. Now, clearly, Daniel here had a calamity. The exile was part of this. But he was reading and studying scriptures. He wasn't coasting. Instead, he was seeking God. And there is this humbling pleading that he does that leads into this holiness idea, where he was seeing God's holiness. And as I was just thinking about this for myself and what this looks like, I was thinking how easy it is to coast rather than to seek God. And what I mean by coast is to say, well, I've sought God, I've confessed sin, I believe in the mercy of God, so I don't always feel compelled to say, God, I need mercy, unless I'm in the Scriptures in such a way that I'm convicted in a fresh way of my own sinfulness, my need for God's mercy. And so what we see right away in Daniel 9 is that the routine of being in the Word leads to genuine confession, to genuine seeking of God, and that that yes, you may have some moments that this is natural because you're just overwhelmed by who God is, but without the discipline of being in the Word and being prayerful, then there will be maybe a tendency to coast and miss the ideas of seeking God. Now clearly, it's hard to seek God at a high passion level every day, just like it's hard to maintain a romantic relationship with the intensity that one has initially. But if you don't return to and find that passion on a routine basis, the relationship coasts and it begins to die. So today, my challenge, my encouragement is to say, what would it look like for you to seek God through prayer and pleading for mercy, and what's keeping you from maybe doing that today?
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.